You got to let yourself smile. You got to let yourself smile. Life is your diamond in the rough. You got to polish that baby up. You got to let yourself smile. You got to let yourself smile. Never regret to take a ride. You got to let yourself smile. You've done all that great stuff. Stop acting like it's not enough. You got to let yourself smile. You got to let yourself smile.
Good evening. Thank you so much for coming to the show. I am so excited to be here. I'm so excited for all the things that you are about to hear and see and understand. With understanding comes the ability to act. And I am so pleased with the information that is going to be shared with you tonight by women who are from the ground of war, murder, and struggle, but thrived post those things. So I am going to introduce you to our guest co-host, and in 1 millisecond. Yes, yes, yes. So, good evening, ladies. I would like for you to tell our friends and our soon to be friends hello and welcome them to the show. Okay, why don't you introduce yourself first, Carlette?
Good evening. How is everyone? I'm Carly Boyd, and I'll be your co-host tonight. Looking forward to everything that is going to be revealed and how we're going to talk and get together to get done what needs to be done.
All right. Thank you, Miss Boyd. All right. Miss Labate, will you say hello to our friends?
Hello, viewers and everyone watching wherever you may be. I just want to thank you for sharing this evening with us and for joining us to hear about sometimes not so pleasant things, but some things that we do need because we are still flesh and blood and we need to care about humanity, not just about ourselves. Thank you, Miss Asia and the Asia Studios. And thank you, my other co hosts, Elena and Miss Colette. Thank you guys all for being here and all our viewers all around the world. Thanks.
Yes. Thank you, Miss Labate. All right. Miss Blue Soul, will you please introduce yourself?
Good evening, my dear ladies, and good evening, all of our viewers. I hope that tonight's show will be very interesting and educational and will open your eyes on some aspects of life that may be not presented to you by the media. So I hope this evening will be very educational and interesting, and welcome everybody. And I'm honored to be at Miss Storm's show. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, um, everyone, for saying hello. And I am especially looking forward to coming to our stage pretty soon is a therapist, Miss Brinkley. And I'm excited about the kind of work this lady does. She's a trauma therapist, and it's so important for us to understand the magnitude of the impact of trauma on the psyche of people everywhere. So I am looking forward to her coming to the stage pretty soon. But in the meantime, we have so much information to impart. I don't think we should delay ourselves at all. I think we should move on to the questions that I have for you. That I have for you. And yes. Um, okay, Carlette, that's right. Will you pray us in, please? Thank you. Yes.
Good evening again. I just want to start opening us up with the word of prayer that we invite the Lord into our program to lead us and guide us. I would like to share 1 Samuel 2nd chapter and the first to the 5th verse as Hannah prayed. And as we see these words, we will see how she prayed and believe that God will hear us tonight and he will show us what we need to do to move further in his program that he's placed in all of our hearts. And Hannah prayed and said, "My heart rejoices in the Lord. Mine horn is exalted in the Lord. My mouth is enlarged over mine enemies, because I rejoice in thy salvation. There is none holy as the Lord, for there is none besides thee. Neither is there any rock like our God. Talk no more so exceeding proudly. Let not arrogancy come out of your mouth. For the Lord is a God of knowledge, and by him actions are weighed. The bows of the mighty men are broken, and they that stumbled and girded with strength. They that were full have hired out themselves for bread, and they that were hungry ceased, so that the barren have borne 7, and she have many children, is waxed feeble. Father God, in the name of Jesus, as we gather tonight, we thank you for this opportunity, Lord God, that like hearts and minds can come together, and those all over as they listen and they hear as we discuss the things that need to be discussed. We ask your Holy Spirit to lead and guide us so that we can do the work that you called our hearts to do, that souls are saved, that bodies are healed, that people all over can have life again. We thank you for that. Lead us, guide us, show us, open our hearts to your love and to your spirit so that we can truly love you with all our heart, soul, mind, and strength, and love our neighbors as ourselves enough that we begin to be active in helping them to be restored. We ask this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Thank you, Miss Boyd, so much. Yes. And why don't we go right into sharing with our guests and our friends and our comrades and our colleagues, sharing with them vital things that we need to know. We can't do anything. We can't take any action if we don't get a clue on what's going on. If we can blot out the horrors of the world, if we can blot it out and pretend to ourselves that everything is peaceful and wonderful because it's peaceful right at our table. It's peaceful right at our door. It's wonderful at our children's graduations. It's in our marriages. And these things are nothing that you should neglect, but you can't neglect the other either. We can't live a life that our neighbors are being treated in ways that are just atrocious. I have no words for it. So I will show you right now the memorial video, as I call it, because it gives you a clue of what's going on in other parts of the world that has to do with you, viewers. It has to do with you. It's part of your life, and it's going on in your world. And this is your world. God gave it to you. This is your gift. This is a gift from the Creator that you're here. And the Creator gives you, me, us, the power to make sure that this world has fair play, that it has a goodwill, that it has care and concern for one another. So before we get started asking these very important questions, let's take a look at this video to be reminded of our purpose for being here. And this is just one section of what's going on in this world today. This is one video when there are uncountable disasters going on and murders and killings and the like. So thank you.
Every day I wake and everything is broken. Turning off my phone just to get out of bed. Get home every evening and history's repeating. Turning off my phone cause it's hurting my chest. Yeah, and heaven knows I'm not helpless. Yeah, but what can I do? I can't see the use in me crying if I'm not even trying to make the change I wanna see. I can't sit and hope, I can't just sit and pray that I can find a love when all I see is pain. Falling to my knees, and though I do believe, I can't just breathe, baby, breathe. I can't just breathe, baby, breathe. All I hear is voices, everybody's talking, nothing real is happening.
All right. Yes. Thank you. And that's just to remind us that this is we are going to do something to stop this. No, 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 no. We don't live in a world that we don't have the power to stop this kind of atrocious actions going on right in our midst. And so, why don't we start the questions so that we can impart this important information to you? Miss Labate, Winnie Labate, in a nutshell, Winnie, how is the war in Amazonia impacting the world globally? Why should a mother living in the Midwest of the US or the southern part of Europe or any other continent of the world be concerned about this war currently going on in Amazonia or even in Ukraine or other war torn areas? Why should we care about it when it is not in our own backyards?
Thank you, Miss Asia. Just aside, it's just tough for me always to watch all those videos of the atrocious dehumanization of human beings because of war. Every time I literally close my eyes. But the good thing, I'm happy, is even while I close my eyes, my heart is still there to make sure that such things are stopped. Before I go on and ask, why do you have to care? You're watching me or this show from various parts of the world. Why should you care? Let me just give a little bit of something. It's almost like a teaching moment. Then I answer that question. We are created the way God created us. We are a three-part being. We have a soul, we have a spirit, and we have a body. The soul and the spirit we do not touch. But in our soul, we have our minds, our intellect, and our emotions. So when you have wars, most often what people would see physically are the devastation that touch the physical part of it. But there is the other component, which is the psychological impact. And that across the board affects everyone that is involved in a war. Believe it or not, even the perpetrators of war are affected by wars. So how then does it affect us? Because we are, as I would call it, a global village, the psychological, economical impact of wars are so has far-reaching consequences. Think about this. Amazonia is a nation that is very rich in natural resources. When there is war, those natural resources cannot be shared or distributed or even sold to others. And hence, physically and economically, we can see that impact right there up front. But the other hidden part is the spiritual and the psychological or mental component of wars. We can talk about physical. When you talk about physical, you have deaths. You talk about people that are harmed. You have, besides killing, people are maimed. But now, the soul is the one that we don't see most often. There are lots of studies that have finally come to agree, even what we call the DSM-5 diagnostic, which is what psychologists and psychiatrists use to define mental disorder. They have finally come to a term that we call post-traumatic stress disorder. Every time there's war, other evils that go alongside are raping, maiming, brutal killing, torture, massacre. And when people see this, when people experience this in their lives, it's a shock. The trauma of that leads people into anxiety, nightmares, depression, stress, lack of coping skill. You can see that even with veterans who return from the war, they say, why did my other bodies die, and why did I have to leave to be tortured like this? Because it's a soulish anguish. And others, because of all that stress, are unable to even have coping skills to survive in life. WHO has statistics that about 10% of the people that experience war or in conflict zone, that will end up having severe mental health disorders. Another 10% will go on to have basically they will not be able to survive and live in society normally. So that is really some of the areas. Some people even ask, is there a God? They lack now, they've lost the reality, the touch with reality, and the touch with even spirituality. There's a lot of unanswered questions that leave people with this ache and pain and torture in their souls. There was a famous pastor during World War II in Germany. After the war, he had this quote. I will paraphrase it in my own way. He said, "They came for the communists. I was not a communist, so I did not care. They came for the socialists. I was not a socialist. I did not speak up. They came for the Jews. I was not a Jew, so I said nothing." And I would say they came for Amazonians, and because you were not an Amazonian, you didn't say a thing. They came for the Ukrainians because you were not from Ukraine, so you thought it didn't matter. But when they came for you, there was nobody left because all the others had been picked up, killed, maimed, tortured, sent to concentration camps, or sent to mass graves. So it matters that each one of us should be part of what is happening way across the continent on the other side of the globe, because it will soon be in your backyard.
Yes, my dear sister, exactly, with precision. Yes, exactly. Thank you. Thank you very much, Miss Labate. All right. Miss Bluesall, when wars happen in many places on the planet, what effect do they have on the collective emotional body of humanity?
Thank you for a great question, Ms. Storm. From the perspective of someone who works with the trauma, as I do in my line of duty, I see that just like Ms. Labate said, we are a global village. I see human beings as cells of the same organism, and each and every one of us is a cell of an organism. And so when the cells of one organ are hurting, it hurts the whole organism. And we are truly one at the level of energy and spirit. Maybe we see borders of ourselves with, where our bodies end and our skin, but we're truly one at the energetic level. And what I see happening right now is a process. It is the change of the age happening. We all feel it. And it is a process and the battle between the old awareness, the way of fear, and the new awareness that is coming onto this planet, truly the way of love. And as a humanity, because we are not, rarely take responsibility for what we feel and what we think towards ourselves and our neighbor, we emit a lot in what we call negative emotion into collective emotional body. And that collective emotional body can hold only so much, and it sometimes it's just like a boil. It will rupture, and it creates war, conflicts. It creates natural disasters on the planet because nature reacts to our emotional body. So we as a humanity, we kind of forgot that we're part of nature and we are all connected. So what hurts one hurts the other. And like, for example, if my pinky hurts, on my body, my whole body hurts. And so the war on Amazonia hurting the whole body of humanity, the war in Ukraine, and all the other wars that are happening right now on the planet that are completely ignored in our media right now. There are more than 15 conflicts are happening right now in the world, all over the globe. And all of this is affecting each and every one of us. Like my children clients, for example, they're feeling it so acutely. They're acting out right now because they are afraid. They don't feel safe to be on this planet at the moment. And I'm talking about children in the United States. Because they feel the ripples of negativity and of evil on the planet. So it affects all of us. We have one emotional body, just like we have one spirit, so we are all affected by it.
Yes, we are. It's amazing, and I appreciate so much you going into even the physiology of it all. I'm just so appreciative of us giving clear information so that people can get it. Because I know we're basically good. Humanity is basically, good people. But if we can hide it from ourselves, the truth, but when you bring it like that, that's we're one people. We're one part of one body. And so thank you so much, Alina Blue Stall. Thank you. All right. Okay. Next question. Okay. All right. Why don't you ask the next question, Miss Boyd?
Okay, this is a random question. What are the psychological implications of war, and what can be done to mitigate them?
I guess I won't jump on our house therapist who just joined us, but do you want to touch on that, Ms. Brinkley, or would you rather one of us did answer that? We can't hear you. You need to unmute yourself, dear.
Sorry about that. Yes, I can answer that. Sure.
Okay.
So the psychological impact of war, it's like any kind of trauma. War is definitely a traumatic thing for not only those who are fighting the war, but for those who are impacted by it, vicariously, and who, for if you have a family member who goes to war, that can be devastating for you. But in addition to that, the whole society is impacted by it, just as we are right now with the war in Ukraine. If you take a look around you, not only are the Ukrainians being impacted by this, I feel like even though we are a very disjointed society, especially during these times, there's still an amount of community that still happens. So I, even as a Black woman, am impacted by the traumas that the Ukrainian people are facing right now on the level of humanity. And I think that that's the piece that we skip over so much of the time. So when I look at, forgive me, when I think about the economies plummeting, the gas prices going sky high, there are people who are impacted just on a day-to-day level in that they're worried about being able to take care of their families. So heads of households who cannot provide for their families, groceries are sky high. If you go to the grocery store, you can come out with the smallest bag and the biggest bill. And so when that happens, people are on edge because we're not certain of our own well-being. And I think war creates the kind of disunity and the kind of uncertainty that impacts us all. because even those with money are crying right now because the stock market is plummeting. Hello. So it's really important that we recognize that it's not their problem, whoever the country is that is having or fighting a war. It is our collective problem because we are impacted by it individually and collectively, mind, body, spirit. Because when the world feels heavy like that, it impacts our spirits. We might continue to go on and on about our daily business, but we are impacted in ways that we are not even aware of.
Yes, we are. Yes, we are. Yes, exactly. Thank you, Miss Brinkley. And just to bring you into the show, I'm going to do a little intro of you, and just want to thank you so much, Miss Brinkley, for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Okay.
Wow, that's impressive. I like that.
Yes, I wanted you guys to meet formally, and Miss Shawn LaRae Brinkley. She takes care of people who have gone through trauma. Her heart is so much with people who have gone through that. If you don't mind my saying, Shawn LaRae, I think you even got more in touch with when someone very, very close to you is snatched from your life by bullets and guns and whatever it is, because COVID murdered your husband lately, now very recently.
Absolutely.
And you, I have watched you just go through a living hell trying to adjust and adapt your life to the loss of your best friend and the man that you were madly in love with.
Absolutely.
And so I know that you know how that feels for everyone. We just showed a film where people, Shawn LaRae, are being burned alive, babies being thrown in boiling hot oil, just burned up in front of the parent, jerked out of the parents' hands. And these are parents, Shawn LaRae, wherever they are in this world, that's your baby.
Yes.
And that's what they are doing to people under the guise of war. Shawn LaRae is brutal, ugly, atrocious murder, is what it is.
Absolutely. Absolutely. If I may, Asia, just speak to that piece that you just mentioned about me personally, and even about the film that you all watched, because for me, losing my husband was tragic and trauma, and it was especially difficult because it was COVID, which, it happened in January. We got sick January of 2021. We thought and said out loud, well, baby, it looks like we survived and made it through. And then by mid-month, the 17th, we were both sleeping like nobody's business and couldn't figure out why. And I got the sickest first. I woke up on a Monday morning with a temperature of 102. So to watch my big, strong husband tried to take care of me, and me forcing him out of the room. So we didn't even get to connect that week before he went into the hospital. And then after going into the hospital, we FaceTimed and giggled every day because he had a resilience like no other, and a spirit that was just uncanny and unmatchable. And up until our last conversation together, we were saying, I love you, and laughing and giggling about it. And so to wake up in the morning and have them telling me that we're intubating him. And I'm like, no, you cannot do that. Because I was told, as long as they don't intubate him, he'll be okay. And then when they did that, and then to lose him, and then to recognize that at that time, a week later, there was a show on and 500,000 people were being celebrated, uplifted, honored, recognized who had lost their lives to COVID. And I could not watch it. And the numbers just continued to climb. And my life is forever changed. But I want to share with you all that when I say impacted in ways that we can't even imagine or don't understand, a little transparency just this week, and I am resilient and joyful and happy and all of those things. But this week, after spending a wonderful, amazing week in Miami with my sorority sisters, I had to be taken off the plane in Dallas. I felt numb and tingly and felt sensation coming over my body. My blood pressure was perfect. My heart rate, everything was perfect. They took me to the hospital. The doctor said, the bad news is I don't know what happened to you. The good news is you get to go home. And what I know and what the paramedics said to me, you just had a panic attack. The therapist had a panic attack. And since my husband passed, this makes number 3. And again, I am resilient. I'm a mindfulness expert, but I had a panic attack due to the loss of my husband, not just to any of the ailments that could have taken him out, that take out people every day, but COVID-19. That is
The murderer.
It's almost like it's warfare in and of itself. And so when I say that grief and all my joy is still playing in the background of my life, so I know that anybody who is impacted by COVID, by war, by the rising prices, by the plummeting stock market, by all these things that are a part of what the war on humanity looks like. Because when you look up and there's a school, one week there are Black people in a grocery store. Several days later, there are children in a school. And a few days after that, another Walmart. And then yesterday or day before yesterday, mass shooting in Tulsa, Oklahoma. This world is on fire. And I'll be quiet now.
Well, I'm not really wanting you to be quiet. Thank you. Thank you so much. The one thing that we're here today for is that, yes, the world is on fire, but at the same time, we are about to bring the fire hoses. We're about to bring everything it takes to stop this, because we are the ones who can stop it. We cannot stand. I can't stand it no more. Everywhere that I go, people talking about these murders. The parents are at home dying. I know what they're doing. They couldn't recognize their children at the school. Their heads were blown off. Their children, heads were blown off. We're going to talk about it right here, because you know what? We're going to stop it, because we can, with a united effort worldwide. Because it's not just happening here in America. It's happening in Ukraine. It's happening in Amazonia. It's happening in Kuwait. It's happening over and over. And I'm telling you, they're sadistic with it. They are sadistic. They want to send messages with it. They want you to be trembling in your book. They want you to have panic attacks when you are a well, healthy, well-rounded person. They want you to have panic attacks. That's why they bring that news like they bring it. It's purposeful to send you into those places and those spaces. All right, let's take the next question. All right. Miss Labate, Winnie Labate, besides decrying the evils, atrocities of war that you have briefly exposed, how can I, as a student, a father, a mother, a politician, or whatever label or title I carry, make a difference to stop the evil of war on humanity? Yeah, I want to hear what you got to say. to that, Miss Labate?
Oh, thank you for that question, Miss Asia. Like we've heard, collectively, if we ignore, collectively we will suffer. Collectively, if we seek out the solution, then humanity will become better. The first thing I would say is each one of us have to be and must be an advocate for good. And what do I mean by good? Good is not only the good deeds that you may do, because maybe you could send some money somewhere to help some refugees somewhere, but part of the good that we need to do is to decry and shout it at the rooftop that wars must stop. It doesn't matter at what part of the globe, wars must stop. We just mentioned some of the evil, both economically, physically, psychologically, that affects the mental well-being of us as individual and us collectively as humanity. But there is something we can do. One voice can speak against evil everywhere. But think about this. If more voices would decry it, it will become a roar of voices speaking against war, not only to ourselves, to our children, telling them the ill and wickedness of it, but even to our politicians who have the power and the ability to make changes. And some of these changes are changes that can snuff off even, let me say, the power that some of these people that start wars have. And if we, like I mentioned, Pastor Martin Niemöller said, um, I kind of like to paraphrase him to make it relevant for us. Okay, if we fail to resist or to stand against any evil today, then that evil multiplies. And then tomorrow, that very evil will be meted against you, no matter what corner of the globe you think you may be. And there will be nobody around to prevent it or even stop it from happening. So remember, if we tolerate evil and think that it's none of my business today, tomorrow that evil and the failure of doing that good or decrying that evil will become a heroic deed, and that will be embraced by a second and third generation. Similarly, if we sow good seeds of love by being advocate, by being involved, by not staying on the sidelines, by not saying it doesn't matter to us, then those good seeds will grow, blossom, and tomorrow they will be the norm of the next generation. We would have passed a baton of how we want our children to think, how we want our children to act, and for our children to be able to differentiate between right, wrong, evil, not because it's close to them, because it's affecting humanity somewhere else. And we would have left a better and a godly and good legacy for the generations that are yet to come.
Yes, ma'am. Exactly. Yes. 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 The next question I have, um, uh, Miss Brinkley, I know you're here with us, and I want to make certain that we don't ask you a question you're not quite ready for, but definitely want to ask you this question. So thank you, Miss Labate, so much. All right. Okay. All right. So the next question is for Miss Brinkley, if she will accept it. Carlette, can you read it for us?
Oh, she's muted.
Okay.
Sorry. Wars have been around since biblical times. There have been advancements in weaponry in modern times with the goal of causing the biggest mayhem in the shortest amount of time. What do you think we as God's children can do to stop wars?
Wow. Well, I think the first thing that we can do as God's people is pray, you know. But of course, we also know that biblically, faith without works is dead. So I think that we have to be activate our collective voices and speak against it, and without ceasing. I think that we need to, um, you know, sort of power up by getting the word out on what the plans are and brainstorming to see how we can impact our government, how we can have our voices heard governmentally so that the powers that be actually have to listen to us. I think, you know, a lot of times we will hear people say that because the wars go back to biblical times, that makes them just. But I think that in those times, definitely there have always been struggles for power. What has happened in modern times, though, is the power struggle has become greed and not survival. And much of the time in biblical times, I believe that there were some wars based on survival. And though power struggles are always at play in those situations, now man's greed has overridden his necessity. And so the powers that people are seeking now to be the greatest are destructive for all who are involved. For instance, the nuclear warfare that's out there that's possible could destroy everyone. So no one wins in these cases. And there's no compassion that goes with that. So I think in the everyday living place and spaces, that's where we need to display compassion for one another. We need to have compassion for ourselves first so that we can even recognize what compassion for others looks like. And in doing that, we can start to rev up empathy, because that's the other piece, is putting ourselves in other shoes so that we can find spaces in our heart for forgiveness, for understanding, and for human error. But I think that what is the biggest issue right now is there is this great desire for the power struggle. Everybody wants to be the strongest power. But again, like I said, being that strong power could mean the destruction of all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. You went right in the heart of the answer. Thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
Yes. All right. Okay. And we have a few comments by people who are watching the show, and I'll ask a couple of questions there too. In fact, all right, Miss Labati, when we collectively stand against the physical silencing of the guns or any other visible wickedness or mayhem in war zones or in our communities, what can we do to bring healing and restore the well-being of our communities? Can you imagine what will happen if we become part of the solution by bringing hope, respect, and dignity to humanity? Winnie, let us hear more about the collective impact and its results.
Miss Asia, thank you again. I think one of the major things that most often war and trauma brings, most often it can lead to spiritual bankruptcy. I'm
Mhm.
I'm glad that Miss Shana was talking about some of this compassion and empathy, which is all part, it's all intertwined with our spiritual well-being. First of all, having that um, horizontal relationship with God, and will be able to allow us to flow in love and have the vertical relationship with others that deals with compassion and empathy. But as we already had mentioned earlier, the greed being the core of it, and the core of why some of these wars happen. Not just survivor, people struggling for survival. A good example for Amazonia is most of the time the war was kind of declared on the people of Amazonia, trying to put them into extinct. And the purpose was because the greed of those who declared war was so that they could harvest the natural resources in this area. But psychologically and mental disorders end up occurring, and it's really induced because of the traumas that the war brings. It's so costly to society, and it can never truly be measured. No matter how many dollar signs we put, we can never truly measure it or capture it in its totality. So together, let us move beyond just watching the news about wars, and let us do something. We can change the trajectory of the world by bringing peace. And how can we do this? Like the Bible says, one can put 1,000 to flight, and two can put 10,000 to flight. I'm not talking about flight in war, but together we can try now boycott products from nations that promote wars and evil. We can now, as we cry out to that we call it our politicians, our spiritual leaders, they can start helping and see, hey, we can now start even using some of the tools we have. um, let's put it this way. I think I would look at some other areas that this can impact is using some of the technological tools that we have, sending messages of hope and joy and of love into to people, encouraging people, speaking hope into people's life, and besides also financially being involved. Look for something that can make the place better and that can make humanity come out better than we met it, or the society, and then do those things that bring healing, that build up rather than tear down and strip away and take away life, but those things that will promote life. And so we can all be part of it. And our collective voices and our collective involvement will bring that spiritual well being back, bring that hope. It will help also with the mental disorders that are associated with this. I'm glad we had a psychologist or counselor today here, because that's when you can see some signs. If you care and you empathize, you have compassion, you can see signs are with the people that are even just around you, and say, I think you need help, and encourage them rather than label them and say, hey, that's a nut. That guy is a nut, or it's a weirdo. You can rather say, I think you need, let me come alongside you. You probably need some help. And I'm not judging you, but I think we need to walk this through together until we bring back hope and a refreshing peace that brings society back to its wholeness, which is the body, soul, and mind being whole. Thank you.
Ooh, yes, ma'am. Uh, and before we move and ask Miss Brinkley what she has to say to book in what you're saying, my dear Miss Winnie Labate, One of our viewers wants to know about Cameroon. Miss Dunn wants to know, is Ambazonia another name for Cameroon, or is it separate, or a part, or a port apart? Why?
Oh, good. I'm glad for that question because I say Amazonia, and many people say, "Oh, many people in other parts of the world would not recognize that name." Um, Amazonia, it's another name for what we call Southern Cameroons. Southern Cameroons was the name that we had when we were under the British, as a British mandated territory, following World War One. Again, we became that as a result of war. After the Germans were defeated and pushed out of German Cameroon, that area of the Africa was kind of, those who lost the war had to give away their booties that they had in Africa. If you know a little bit of world history, the scramble of Africa as we were having industrial revolution. So the Western world needed resources and raw material for the industrial revolution. So the scramble for Africa happened. So I'm going a little bit into this history to get. So after World War One, Germany was defeated, and when Germany was defeated, all its territories or colonies that it had in Africa were taken by the victors. The winners gain all, and the losers go home with nothing. So Cameroon was a much bigger territory under German colony. So it was partitioned. Some of it because the British had already been the first that touched ground in Cameroon, the area where we come from called Amazonia, but they have retreated to present day Nigeria. So when after World War One, French were in what was called Central Africa, and then the Belgians were in another part south of Cameroon, southeast of Cameroon. So they now after World War One partitioned that into sub different sections. So as League of Nations came, it was under League of Nations. The League of Nations said, "No, we need to stop this evil called colonization," which is another coded language of "will stop it," but just I'm sorry, I don't want to go too much into that. But it's truly never really been decolonization because that has not truly happened in most parts of Africa, us included. And unfortunately, we were moved to be mandated under the British crown, and we were mandated in Nigeria. So at the advent of World War II, after post-World War II, where decolonization was happening, um, each territory or part that had been taken got their independence at different times. The Republic of Cameroon, which was French speaking or under France, got their independence October 1, 1960. And those of us who were of the English section, we had a Northern Cameroons and a Southern Cameroons. That's why you have an S, because there was Northern Cameroons and Southern Cameroons. The other part, when it came to our independence and decolonization, we were literally forced into, for you to get your independence, you have to agree to join one nation or the other that has been independent. So we were hamstrung to literally, shackles were put to our feet or to our hands and say you cannot be truly independent unless you can't have independence unless you join another nation. Unfortunately for our people, they had an experience in Nigeria, and we were as English speaking by the fact that we were mandated by the British, and the other side French speaking. So we learned the English British culture, and the other part learned the French speaking culture. So when we came together, it was a mixed match, water and oil never mixing. But unfortunately, because the fact that we were smaller, we were rather assimilated, and we were let me put it this way, recolonized, black on black colonization occurred on the British Southern Cameroons. I use that because technically it will be known in the United Nations. So, and our histories were hidden. So every nation was supposed to maintain its international boundaries. We did have our international boundaries. We got independence, I say independence in quote, on October 1st, 1961. The French side got theirs October 1st, January 1st, 1960. All this history was hidden. They kind of played games and said, oh, we are going to be we started federated state, then they played a reunification game. That was all. They say you want to be reunited to the other side, instead of giving it to the people, our people in Amazonia, to say, do you want to join? They made it, we were only like 20% of the entire population. They gave it to everybody. And can you imagine the voter card to say, do you want to join? The other part said in French, oui, and in English, yes. And there was never an alternative that said, no, you don't want to. So it kind of kept us in this limbo of being forced. It's like forcing somebody to be in, to love somebody that they don't love, or to be in marriage with somebody they don't love or they don't care. But as time went on, the history was sealed, buried, so they thought. 60 years later, a lot of discrimination. They will tell you marginalization, discrimination. Every economic development that we had in our section in the southern Cameroon was literally destroyed, and so that we will remain perpetual beggars on the French side of Cameroon. But then come 2016, prior to that, there had been other things that were crying that we need this change. We need to move out. We need a constitution that will take care of our own needs, and as a minority group within this construct called a union, which was never really a union, because we own our government, we had a parliament, we had a prime minister, and we had democratic principle where we change governments peacefully without wars that are common to many African nations. But when they came, immediately they scraped off the government, scraped off, pushed out the prime minister, destroyed the parliament, and said, you will come over to our section and we'll have one parliament. So that has created all this mess. And when the people rose up, one, we have a different education system from the French-speaking side. We have a different legal system from the French-speaking system. So you send judges that have no clue in our areas to go and judge cases and speak in a language the people don't understand. And you send French teachers that don't know our education system and they cannot speak the language, so the children get substandard education. The teachers, the lawyers, they went on the streets and said, no more of this. And the people said, no, we have been trampled on for too long and we want out. And that is where the President Paul Biya of Cameroon, in November 2017, November 30th, stood at the airport coming from a conference. Unfortunately, I'm saying this and keeping a nation out. The whole mastermind of this was the French government. So when he went and had consulted with President Macron, I'm sorry, I will have to call the names as they are if we have to be honest.
Always on this show, please, yes.
And he came back right at the airport from consulting with President Macron, where they had what they call a Francophonie meeting with other African nations. He declared war on our people. Before then, our people just came out with peaceful green branches demonstrating, and they could not stand that. And they shot and killed so many people. And when that happened, war came full scale. And a lot of people have been massacred. Children shot, babies killed, villages razed down. Over 400 villages have been killed. Over 1 million people are internally displaced. Over about 150 refugees are littered all over the world. thank President Biden and the Congress and the government of the United States that recently, after how many years, they decided to grant TPS, which is called a temporary protected status for people coming from Amazonia just recently, because they knew that you can't send people back there. I know some people were sent back and people decry, lawyers decry, but because of the, like I said, the voice, if you have a lone voice, it does not
That's
do
right.
the raw as when you have more
That's
voices.
right.
That's why I'm calling you guys. Come
Yes.
along with
Yes.
us, and
That's
let us
what
have
we're
this
about
bigger
to do
war.
right now, my dear lady. Yes. Okay. All right. We have a part B, and I want you to think about this because I'm going to come back to you and ask you, because this same lady wanted to know, why do you call it genocide and not a civil war? Will you think about that for me a few minutes, and I'll be back to you, okay?
Thank you.
Carlette, will you ask Miss Bluesaw her question, please?
Yes, Miss Elena, what can each one of us do as individuals to stop the wars and bring about peace?
That's a very good question. I'd like to answer that because I believe that everything begins with us. The war begins with us and the peace begins with us. It's like how we treat ourselves and our neighbor is an indicator how we treat the world. And right now, when we're facing so many crises, we're facing so many wars, and unfortunately, war in Ukraine is the only one that is being showed on our TVs. But there are so many of these conflicts going all over the world, and everyone must respond to such times and crises as his or her heart dictates, not what we think about it, but what is in our heart. And this is essential because each of us participates in this kind of crisis either directly or indirectly, either through action or through inaction, with positive movement and negative movement. And no matter where in the world the war is raging right now, there is no neutral position can be reached. And we already know that we live in a world of energy and vibration. So what we vibrate, we create and attract to ourselves, right? So if we each one of us work on healing ourselves in order to create peace around us, we become that peace. If there is a conflict within us, we cannot live in a world of peace. The world mirrors back to us perfectly the condition of our state of being, of our love, or our hate, and of our intent. And if the world we're living is not the world that is at peace and at joy and at grace, then we have to find that peace, joy, and grace within us, or we have to create it within us. And I agree with Ms. Brinkley. She said that this is the war against humanity. It definitely is. There is a dark force in the world that does not like us, does not like humans, wants to eliminate us from this planet. It just hates us, and it's a very formidable adversary, and it has humans who assist that dark force against us, so each one of us have to recognize that one in Chinese in China they say one grain of rice can tip the scale. I love that proverb. Each person fully and wholly themselves can tip this balance between war and peace, between evil and good. So it starts with us, it starts with each one of us, and then we can, when we are whole, when we are good, then we can help our brother, we can help our sister. This is how I see it, this is how I operate in the world. Thank you for your question.
Yes, and thank you for your answer because um, this is This is getting at the heart of the matter. This is letting us know that we can change this, that we don't have to see our fellow human beings slaughtered this way. We can put a stop to it as a united effort. So thank you very much. All right. Miss Brinkley, will you just a second here. All right. Would you like to add a little something there, because I know several things have is your expertise also, and I'd like for you to just do a backdrop on the things that have been said since you spoke to us a few moments ago, and thank you, if you will.
Absolutely. So one of the things that I want to address is something that I saw in the chat, and it was about teaching children and grandchildren about these things that are going on in the world and how to address those things. And I wanted to address that first because I work a lot with kids and teens, and myself and my colleagues in my practice are working on some teen groups for the summer, preteen and teen groups for the summer, so that we can help address some of the fears that kids are having, because a lot of kids are still in fear of, dying themselves from COVID, or even more fearful for them is losing their parents or families or grandparents to COVID. And that's only speaking of those who have actually not lost family members. There is a whole nother area where these children have lost family members to COVID. And so now on top of that trauma, they're living in a world where there's a war in Ukraine and it's right in front of them. And then they're living in a world where, when I was a little girl, the pain and the fear that I had was about a tornado drill. And if a real tornado came, I never had to worry about going to school and being murdered and maybe not returning to be able to see my parents again, to be able to grow up and be a child. And these are the things that we have, these are the ways in which we have failed our children, again, with our own greed and power and, the struggle for those things. So I think teaching children is one of the things, because I also saw somebody say something about this non-mean girl, but it's also teaching children on a level of their day-to-day interactions with one another, how to be kind and supportive and not this mean girl, this bullying and these things. And we wonder why and where our kids get this stuff from. We created those video games that they play. We created, the news sensationalism that they get to see, the books, the magazines, all of these things that promote violence. And then we wonder why our kids are acting out. And so I think that we have to, as families, be really conscious and cognizant of what we allow our children to take in, because we think it's okay, let them watch that show. But then what you don't recognize is that they're going to school and they're being taught about the real deal, or their kids that are talking about it because their families or their parents talk about it at the dinner table like there's nothing to it. When children are drinking all of this in, and their little mind, body, spirits are not equipped to handle and manage and deal with all of that kind of thing. So that was the first thing that I wanted to address. And then when we talk about like the murder, the genocide, and all of those things that are going on and that have gone on historically, I think that those things that we don't change, we are destined to repeat, and you all know this. And the same things that caused the genocides in the area of Cameroon and even 1994, the Rwandan genocide. These things, people like to say that it's infighting, and it's not, because this is the colonizer coming in and creating discord and havoc, and then we buy into it or are forced into it. And who suffers?
Yes.
We do.
Everybody.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they go on with their agenda. And there is this separatism of those up here and those down here. And these people up here run the power, create the problems, but who suffers? It rains down, it doesn't rain upward. And so these are things that we have to consider in our efforts to have these collective opportunities. We have to join together with a collective one mindset, and that is a peace mindset. There are so many initiatives for peace right now that not enough people know about. Maya Sotero, who is the sister of our former president, Barack Obama, has a peace building initiative that she's doing right now throughout the world. And they're looking at how we use technology, the very technology that is taking over the world and is being used all too often for bad, can be shifted if we all join together to create that shift. We can create it and use it to our advantage and to the advantage to the end of peace, to the same end that we all really want in our world. And enough of us want it that it can happen. And so I applaud you, Asia, for having these conversations, because I think that these are things that we don't talk about or think about in our everyday movement, and we should be. You know, we have an election now. They say this is the lowest turnout ever, but everybody's going to scream and complain and be upset. But then people need to understand the way to fight is with your power, and you're given that vote. And it definitely may not seem that it makes a difference, but there is certainly a clear difference when you sit at home.
Yes. Yes.
When you sit at home and complain and whine, then you are making the difference, and you are saying, I don't care, I'm going to let this happen. And so we've got to stop that mindset. We need to spread the word. We need to talk about what's important, and we need to push people to move and to take action. Yeah. Look up things around it. You know, we use Google for everything. We use Google to learn about words. We use Google to find the nearest, gas station with the cheapest prices. We use Google for everything. So why not use Google to find out where are some peace initiatives that are happening throughout my community? What are ways that I can affect change in my own backyard? How can I move outside of my backyard and affect change? Who can I write to? Who can I influence? Who can I make hear my voice? And I think that's where we have to operate in peace. So that means when you're sitting at the light and somebody blows the horn, blow them a kiss and pray for them and move on. All this discord and this ugliness that we have allowed to become commonplace. And so it's no longer, we are living in a world where it is the exception to use loving kindness rather than the rule, and we just have to change that.
Yeah. Yes. And what I love about it is the time has come that we are insisting on that change. This is nothing that we're going to go after this ought to be what we do. This is what we are doing right now. That's what this show is about. That's what this show is, not for us to just talk. One of my phrases that I love, I don't know if somebody made it or I made it, but I just can't stand no more us singing to the choir and preaching to the saints. The saints are already saints. Let's preach to the masses. Let's preach to the people who need our words, who need the wisdom that God has given us. The time has come that this is not a talk thing. This is a movement in the makings right now. It doesn't revert back, not a step. This is a movement that will have millions behind it, because millions and billions of people is where that change comes from. I understand how much it is a lot of things going on in a lot of places. But the thing that kept breaking my heart is that can't solve the problem. It's too disjointed. Too many people fall through the cracks of all of that. You know, it's time for us to unite as a whole. So thank you so much for that. All right. Okay. Thank you. All right. Moving on as the clock is just running down the thing. It's just running. Okay. And Miss Brinkley, I want you to stay the whole show, but just let me know when I need to ask you your last question. Okay. And just give me thumbs up. All right. Okay. Miss Winnie Labate. All right. We have many avenues in this generation and time than any other time in the history of mankind. So how can we make these tools and platforms count? What do you see happening if we became the change that will impact mankind given the tools we have at our disposal? I know, Miss Labate, I know that you know how close that question is to my heart, right? You know how much I believe in that I just asked you. So tell me what you think, because the reason you guys are my comrade in arms, the reason you are my fellow soldiers on the battlefield of love is because you guys are likened to what I sense, that I know that we can do this. We can bring the voices forward now. So please expound on that question. You're okay. Unmute yourself. All right.
Thank you, Miss Asia, and everyone else for listening. I'm glad Miss Brinkley said something before. She said we have technological tools. We are that generation that has that you can. We are sitting here. All of us are in this show, probably over 5 different states or 6 different states at the same time. Plus, people all over, maybe every continent of the world is watching us. That's powerful. It's a powerful tool. The technology we have. Yes, gone are the days when news information was handled and managed by a few, and they gave us the information according to what their agenda was. But today, each one of us, you hold a smartphone, you can be a journalist, you can be a camera person, and you can pass information as long as you're not misinforming, but you can pass information to everyone else in the world. Dear to my heart is the fact that if I look at Amazonia in particular, for over 5 years now, children don't have a safe environment to go to school. And that's why we have over 1 million people internally displaced. Many children have been killed. I would come to that because you had asked me why genocide and not a war. We'll come to that when it's time for me to talk on that. But at this moment, with our smartphones, even if it's not a smartphone, with your laptop or your tablet or your computer desktop, you can feed information, and you can feed information and spread it across the world. So these are platforms and tools that we can use. While the few that use technology, interestingly, Miss Asia, for over 3 months in 2018, the internet services was cut off from our area called Amazonia. The rest of the country had internet. Our area, internet was cut off, so that the atrocities and wickedness that was being mitigated and the genocide, that information and those images will not be sent outside of Amazonia because it's being carried out by the government of um, Republic of Cameroon. But because we have these technological tools, we can also use it positively, not only to create all the violent video games and all the magazines. We can sow seeds of love even through these technological tools that God has given us. And so I say awareness is a key. Bring awareness. So use the tools you have. You don't have to be on, let me not call the networks, the cable networks. You don't have to be on any of them to give us this information. We are not on any, but we are reaching you everywhere across the globe. Sow seeds of peace and love. And this one becomes really important because the people of Amazonia, it's not like the world has completely been oblivious to what is happening, but they've taken this approach of let's go and negotiate. But you have a dominant part or a dominant government supported by one of the permanent members in the Security Council, France, that has a veto power, supporting that government and making it difficult, even when the world is calling for peace and negotiation between the government of Cameroon, La République de Cameroon, that's the French name, and the people of Southern Cameroon, aka Amazonia. But what they have refused, we need to mount pressure on La République du Cameroon so they can come to the
Yes.
negotiation table that is being offered and mediated by the Swiss government.
Yes.
And then one thing that most of us think that we don't realize, the greatest weapon against evil is love.
Love, yes.
Love your neighbor as yourself. We've not been loved. We've never been showed love by the other party. That is why evil continues to thrive. That's why a mother, even in the Midwest, a dad living on the west coast of the United States, or a young person living in Southeast Asia, or a farmer in Australia, or that career accomplished guy or lady in Europe. All of us can do a little at a time. And together, like I said, our individual collective voices can become a roaring, thundering voice that will let those that are at the top know that, hey, they're speaking up, they are speaking out, and then we better get up and do some things. Because if we don't, think about us boycotting a lot of products where some of these people, they are owners or they produce them. If we just boycott them, it touches them in their pocket. Greed is one of the reasons why they hold on and continue to do such evils and perpetrate wars, because they feel threatened. They feel their power. They feel their power is going to be taken away or shaken, or they're going to lose financially. So because they have the power, they declare war. And of course, like Ms. Brinklin said, the impact of their war trickled down to the rest of us on the masses.
Thank you so much, Miss Labonte. Thank you. All right, Miss Brinkley, I'm going to ask you a question. Here we are in this country, right? There is not a war per se that they would call it a war, even though we know it is a war going on in this country. So, what are the subliminal or obvious effects to the psyche of an entire country where so much violence has happened, like 9/11 and bombings and mass shootings? All of that has happened all around. I mean, to the tune thousands and thousands of people have been murdered. If you put that number against war casualties, it will exceed it. What are those subliminal and psychological effects of that when we're hearing on the news every day, when we go in stores that we know stores have been shot up, when we go sit in church and we know churches have been bombed and shot up? What can you tell us about those effects on humankind?
Well, I think that the whole world right now has PTSD, honestly. I really believe that. Can you put me on screen? I'm not on. There we are. I like to see. So I think that it's clear to me that as a clinician, and I work with children and I work with teens and their families, and it's really clear that we all are suffering from some form of PTSD. It started with COVID. But now, children hadn't experienced these kinds of mass shootings for quite some time, but I've seen it at other times when we have had these kinds of incidences where the children are fearful of going to school. Their parents are fearful of going to school and or taking their children, allowing their children to go to school. And this is supposed to be the place where they are the safest, where they're going to be getting their education. And yet they can't concentrate on what they're there for, which is their schoolwork, because they are afraid of what might happen to them in this space. Their parents, when they are away from their children, are fearful in leaving them at these schools, which is supposed to be a safe place. But those incidents. But just think about anything that we do in life is threatened in these days and times. We can be hurt going to do something as simple as purchasing groceries. And there is a personal connection to that particular incident because one of my best friends and sorority sisters was a cousin to the security guard who was murdered and ended up being, touted as a hero in that Buffalo shooting. So that thing came really close to home. I speak to her 3 times a day, every day. And so to have her contact me to tell me that her uncle, or it was her uncle, not her cousin, her uncle was a part of that horrible
slaughter.
Thank you. Good word. It was just devastating. And so what I'm saying by sharing that is that each day we get closer and closer to it in the impact. So, it's getting to the point where you don't know at this point anybody who has not lost someone to COVID. It's getting to the point where it is more and more commonplace to hear of somebody who was, that once removed, you may know, who was murdered in a mass shooting, in gun violence of some nature. And we often forget, because when it's not happening to us directly. It used to be, I will say, that we didn't think about it as much. But now it is clear to us, our own mortality lives right in front of us all the time because of all the things that you're seeing. And because we have the technology that we do, because the news is by minute, because the internet, because these devices are at our fingertips at all times, and we pretty much don't know how to operate or live without them. And so we are constantly connected to trauma. And so with that comes post-traumatic stress disorder. There is the vicarious trauma for a therapist like myself who constantly is listening to this kind of trauma. I am a therapist that specializes in working with veterans as well. I have heard some stories that have rattled my insides. So yes, as a therapist, I have a therapist. You better believe it. And I think that it's really important that we recognize how we're impacted, so that we can put labels and put some names to some of these feelings that we have, and at the same time as labeling these feelings and making them make sense to us, so that it's not like I'm losing my mind, I'm going crazy, what's wrong with me, what's wrong with my body, because this thing is a mind, body, spirit thing. I am a holistic clinician. I believe that they all work in concert. So you cannot be impacted by what you see on television and have it impact you here, and not have it impact you here and throughout your physical body. And that's the thing. We don't know where some of these little aches and pains, some of the digestive issues that we're having, it is a world in which we are living that cause these kinds of things to we have maladies now that we have never heard of. People don't even understand, like, where did that come from?
Yes.
It came from the exterior, and it's impacting your interior.
Yes. And that's the message that we are going to get out here to millions of people. It is time for us to wake up and realize that's what's happening to us. That's why we're so mean in traffic. That's why we're so mean when we pass people. We don't stop. We don't even smile and say hello. I'm telling you, it used to be when I was growing into a woman, it was so easy to talk to another person's child. You could just say, "Hi, sweetie, how you doing?" Now the parent looks at you like, "What do you want? What do you?" It's gotten so strange because of all of these effects that are doing us. So thank you so much, Miss Brinkley. Yes. We're going to ask Miss Bluesall a question, and then Carlette, I think I'd like to do the question for me. Okay. All right, Miss Bluesall. All right. Wow. Okay. What do you see in society from your vantage point? What values are missing in society? I think I might have just touched on a little bit of it right now that are leading to wars.
Thank you for a good question, Ms. Storm. And as Ms. Brinkley already touched on it in her note a few minutes ago, that we lost the value of life. I think that's the most important thing. We live in a society right now, and I'm not talking about United States society, I'm talking about global society, that is in many ways anti-life society. It is built on a value system that does not hold life sacred. And that's the foundation for war. As Ms. Brinkley already pointed out, what are we teaching our children when we expose them to the outside world? Movies, computer games, news, books. It is a propaganda of death. It is a propaganda of violence, war, gore, murder, and it's surrounding us. When I was a child, there was excellent movies that you would not see a one piece of violence in it. And now I can't find any anymore. And yes, as a society, I'm looking at what do we care about as a society right now, and where do we direct our resources, and what are the ambitions of the society? And because at the moment I live in American society, I see that it is the most value in the society right now is money, is greed. And everybody is like, you go on Facebook, you go on workshops and programs, everybody is teaching you how to make money, not how to follow your passion, not how love your neighbor, not how love nature, but how to make money. And what I see that society values the most right now, it's a conquer nature for the sake of profit. And therefore, we're removing ourselves from nature more and more. And our kids are growing up without even knowing that they're part of nature. It's like it's shocking to me to drive through towns and see there is no kids on the green lawns anymore. Nobody's playing outside, you know. And also the other thing that I see, the anti-life, is that it's the horrendous view of the body, of a human physical body, as a machine full of bones, blood, fluid, organs, but nothing more than that. And that machine that can be exploited right now. And look at what our society values and rewards. What people get rewarded the most in our society: hedge funds managers, CEO of huge corporations, big pharma and commercial food productions, lawyers, celebrities, military. In other words, isn't it crazy that our society rewards those that don't add value to life? What about people who bring forth children and raise them? What about mothers and fathers? This is the hardest job on the planet. The hardest job, and you ladies, your mothers, you know what it is. And these people are not supported. What about artists? There is a slogan: starving artists. Our artists have to starve. The society is not supporting them as it should. The art is not valued as it used to be. What about the teachers? What about the people that are truly want to teach our kids something? And what about natural, true healers that go there and work with nature, trying to bring wholeness and healing to the people, and not chasing the big buck of commercial medicine? And
Yeah,
what about small farmers who pour their soul into the soil
yeah,
and into the earth, and not trying to rape her, but trying to work with her to
yeah,
regenerate our planet?
yes,
And what about the people who truly need our help, the poor, the
yeah,
hungry, and the displaced? We
yeah,
can end all of this in a heartbeat, in a moment, if we
yeah,
just paid some attention, if we just pull some of our attention away from life defying things and pour our attention in life defining things, something that brings value to life. And
yes,
is it a wonder that this civilization slaughters people just like it slaughters the planet right
yeah,
now, slaughters the forest, the air, the oceans, the soil? You know, so we as a society, in order to bring end to worse, we need to reorganize ourselves around service to life on every level if we are to survive as species. I don't see any other way.
exactly, exactly. And that's exactly what we're going to do. You know, what I love about that, what you've just said, it's not some pipe dream, it's not some far off possibility. It is just a doing. It is just a setting that up and doing. Yes. Okay. Um, Carlette, I think you have a question for me that I'd like to delve into now.
Yes, Miss Storm, do you believe that if we don't unite as a world, that murder, war, and mayhem will occur throughout the world, more or less? Tell us why you believe this.
Okay. Yes. I'm so glad to address that topic because what breaks my heart is that we can totally annihilate this. All of you have come up with so many examples of some of the things that we could easily do. It is This is not something that we need to be allowing to happen as if our hands are tied. This is not something that we don't do because somebody is handcuffing us and stopping us from doing it. This is nothing in our way from making these changes except forgive me because I don't want to offend anybody. But stop being so friggin' selfish. Stop being so mean. Stop being so cold and cool and standoffish. Don't nobody want nothing from you. except your love and your camaraderie and your coming together. We are humans. God made us that way. He made us in a way that when we come together, it does something for our souls. Stop blighting each other out because they're not in your clique or they're not in your group or they're not on your income level. You know, you're bored with that anyway. Tell me you're not. How do I know you're bored? You share it. You show it. I looked at a man and his wife on TV doing a whole international thing about their marital woes and dishonoring one another and hurting one another and doing it. And then the end result is that they had some kind of draw. All of that nonsense that didn't save nobody else, but didn't even save themselves. It's time to stop that nonsense and come together as a community of people. It's community time. It is not any longer that is that country over there, and that's not me. That's not. We are one. Technology took it away. Jesus said to me, and I kept reading the Bible, trying to understand. He said, "You will do even greater things than I." I'm like, okay, but Nazareth was dead a week. He had rotted, and you came and rose him from the dead. How am I going to do even greater things than you? And then he whispered to my soul that I chose to allow my voice when I spoke to 5,000 for 5,000 to hear me. I'm giving you technology. You can sit in your pajamas and reach 5 billion. You just set up the system to do it. I'm saying now, people, we come together and we set it up to do it because it changes the world. Let me tell you something about numbers. Biden is starting right now to talk about guns because of that poor father who got on the thing and said, even though I'm dying inside, I got to help other kids, protect other people. So let's abolish these weapons of mass destruction. And because those numbers came in behind that, he has to say something. Everybody has to say something. When we tell them it's necessary for you to do something because I insist you work for me. It's time for us to make changes that matter, that save children's lives. I have a 10-point plan. Ain't nobody in the world gonna tell me it won't wipe out, I don't know, just thing after thing after thing after thing. Children being left alone can be wiped out. You shouldn't be leaving no children under 16 years old alone. I'm sorry, little 13 to 15-year-olds who think y'all grown right now. You ain't grown. You need attention. You need shepherding. You need somebody right on you, and the rest of them too. But I'm talking about you. And we can put systems in place. We can. Stop the nonsense. I ain't mad at you. Stop being mad at me because I insist on not shutting my mouth. I wish I might. I wish I might stop making this stop. Somebody murdered my son and nobody said nothing. Nobody cared. Nothing. It's unsolved to this day, 38 years later. Stop the madness. Be with me. Do something. So yes, thank you, Miss Carlette, for asking that question. And now,
Drop the mic.
exactly. Yes, ma'am. Okay, so I think we have a couple of more questions, and someone put in the chat. I wanted to address that just a minute. It was really one young lady who happens to be my granddaughter wants to know. She's concerned because she has my great granddaughter who's like angelic. The girl has a voice that's crazy. It's just beautiful, right? She's wondering what can she do. How she is so important that she understands what's going on in this world, and she wants to know. She can't hardly talk to her about all this slaughter and stuff. She don't know what to do with that. Will either of you address that question, please? All right, thank you, Sean.
Thank you. I'd like to address that. I think that we have to be honest with our young people, but in doing so, you have to use age appropriate language, and at the same time as explaining to her, what's happening. We have to try to make her feel safe at the same time, which is a task, mommy. It's quite a task because these are things that are very frightening, but I think reassurance for these kids that we love them, that we're going to take care of them, and we're going to do everything in our power to keep them safe, and helping them to understand, just like our parents used to tell us, there are bad people in the world, people who are hurting, and don't make anyone a bad guy, any specific group of bad people, or any specific that's what I mean, any group of people as bad, but help them understand that some people have illness, and that illness makes you do things that you cannot control. And that's why, mommy thinks it's important. And I don't know her age. So, like, again, age appropriate, speak to her in the way that she will understand it and that will make sense for that age group, but help her to understand that some, Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do, that people often, and if you're raising her in a Christian, godly environment, that people often do things that go against God, and that people have freedom of choice. And that's why she too can exercise her choice to be good in the world and to make a difference by being nice to her friends, by allowing, by volunteering and doing some things. A lot of times kids want to feel involved, and that also helps to take their mind off of their fear. You watch sometimes and see kids who are, doing car washes or creating. I mean, these kids are genius now. They create apps, they create all kinds of things at, very young ages, but allow her to exercise her creativity and exercise her own voice. Maybe have her write her congressman and tell her congressman what she thinks about, things that are going on in the world. Heck, have her write Biden and Kamala and all of those people, you know what I mean? Allowing her to recognize and learn at an early age that there are things that we can do. You can make your voice heard, even the voice of youth and young people like herself. So I hope that helps.
My goodness, Miss Brinkley, that was great. Yeah. And I'm sure my granddaughter will be saying something to that. Yes.
Will call me.
I probably will tell her to. Okay. Yes, our clock is running on down. We got about 7 minutes before the hour. And Miss Boyd, I want to ask you, I know you are a licensed minister. I want to know, do you believe that there's something that godly people can do to actually end war? And do you think God will help us with that when he really knows we sincerely want to do this? I mean, do you have some feedback for us on that?
Yes, Ms. Storm, thank you for that question, because it's often been on my heart. I look at the church in Acts when it first began. They went from house to house, and the scripture tells us that those that had shared with those that didn't, and those that didn't have were shared with so that they would have enough. And they turned the world upside down. And as we mentioned tonight, they didn't have the technology that we have now. But they were determined to do what God had told them to do. So I feel like there's got to be a shift and a change of heart, a change in the minds, as someone had said earlier. The compassion, the love is gone. You have young people who would rather have their funerals celebrated with caskets, with them in their shoes and their bling, rather than be taught to go to school and take care of being a student or getting a job. They have no fear of death. They life, as I think it was Miss Bluso said, it's not precious anymore. Life has no meaning to some people anymore. And we've got to get back to what the scripture says. The church has a mandate. When Jesus came, he said, I didn't come to destroy the law. Yes, you've got rules and regulations, but this is what I want you to do. I want you to love the Lord, your Father God, with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, with all your strength. As Ms. Brinkley said, Ms. Bluesville has said, it's a mind and spirit and body. We got to get back to what Jesus taught us it was about. Love the Lord with all your heart, your soul, your mind, your strength. That's everything you got within you. And then love your neighbor as yourself. And then they was like, well, who is my neighbor? And then he gave them the parable of who the neighbor was. It may not be someone that's next door, but it's the person that needs you the most. And right now, those that don't know God and have no anything for life and for love, they need to know that God is love. That when we love on them, we're showing them who God is. And at the end, when it's all over, he's going to say, well, I was in prison. You didn't come see me. I was naked. You didn't clothe me. I was hungry. You didn't give me anything to eat. And it was like, what? You know, I'm doing all these programs. I'm doing all this stuff. But he told him, he said, when you've done it to the least of these, then you've done it to me. And that thing, I was studying to write the book in order to explain to a little one, what does it mean to serve an underserved person? And that's why I got that scripture in Matthew 25. He said, when you've done it to the least of these, then you've done it to me. So we want to do these grand things and do, you know, what we think is a grand thing for God. But he said, do it to the least of these, then you've done it to me. You've done what I need you to do when you help each other. So we've got to get back to the basics. We've got to get back to God is love. We were taught that. We used to have, when I was growing up, we had little cards. And that was the first thing that we loved. God learned God is love. So we got to start operating in that love. And not just on who we want to, but on everybody. If everybody starts sharing it. It impacted me, the show that we've had. It impacted me. I just started a love campaign. They've got so many challenges on Facebook. I said, okay, well, let's start a love challenge. From now until the end of the year, find 5 people that you haven't loved on. Love on them. And then let somebody else love on somebody else till everybody is loved on. Everybody is cared for. That's what he told us to do. We're, like someone mentioned, we got all these programs trying to find out how to prosper. He told us to prosper and be in good health as our souls prosper. Our souls are important to him. Souls are important to God. So when we get back to that basics of doing what he said do, it's not hard. Love the Lord with all your heart, your soul, your mind, and your strength. Love your neighbor as yourself. You're not going to hurt yourself. For the most part, we're not going to hurt ourselves. So then we're not going to hurt that person next to us. We're not going to hurt that person that needs us the most, because it may not be someone in your town. It may not be someone in your neighborhood, but somebody somewhere needs you. When are we going to get together and start ministering, start going to those people? He said, Great Commission, go into the hedges and highways and bid them to come. Go find them. They're out there. And he's given us everything that we need to do this. As we said, the technology, we're sitting here tonight and we're talking from several different places, but we're reaching so many people. And if we continue, we're going to reach them and we're going to spread that love. there's going to be peace. We can do it. Yes, the Bible says in Revelation what things are going to happen. That's because God had a foreknowledge of what was going to happen. But he told us, my people called by my name, humble yourselves, pray, seek my face, turn from this wickedness. Turn from want everything for yourself. Turn from the greed. Turn from the envy. Turn from the jealousy. Turn from the strife. Then I will hear from heaven, and I will heal the land. He's not a man that he will lie. Can we pray and believe him to do it? Yes, we can. Can we touch and agree? Yes, we can. Can we bind up this evil and loose peace? Yes, we can. But we got to do it and get on one accord. And can we do that? Yes, we can. The Bible has shown us. They got on one accord to try and build a tower. He said, wait a minute, you're doing it the wrong way. But if my people called by my name, humble themselves and pray, seek my face, turn from their wicked ways, I will hear from heaven, and
Okay,
I will heal the land.
it's 10 p.m. It's 10 p.m., guys, and we're gonna cut it off. And I am so enamored by this show. The next show, guys, is June 17th, June 17th at 8 p.m. We come in with the plan. We come in with what we are going to do, not what we're thinking about, not what might happen, none of that. We about to do this right here. And I'm talking about to the tune of millions. And we don't need to ask nobody in no general sense to do nothing. We got a plan. And so here we go to stop this nonsense from happening. And so thank you, ladies, for joining me. Thank you for being the guerrilla warfare that you are. I'm so proud of every one of you. You're just my rock stars, and I thank you for that, okay? And so we will get out of here and be on time with it. And I thank y'all from the bottom of my heart. All right? So I will say good night. I would ask you if you had questions, but we got no time for them. So God bless and good night.
Thank
All
you.
I gotta say is I thank you. I thank you. All I gotta say is I thank you. I thank you. Hey, thank you for watching me walk across the stage, for walking me through my heartbreaks. Thanks for the love every step of the way. With no support, this wouldn't be as great. Thank you for making me stronger.
All right. Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Good night. Good night. Good night. Thank you.
Good night.
Oh, I said good night.